you bastard!
Brought to you by supporters who probably have better taste than this schmuck.
It's not often that I get really invested in crossover figures. Transformers is my bread and butter. I love a lot of other series, but I'm not that interested in collecting merchandise for them. Yay, Jurassic Park's great, but honestly I don't care about dinosaur toys. Main reason I got that crossover set was because it came with a female T-Rex that actually had a banging color scheme. Who the f cares about JP99? Eva Convoy looks great. I've never seen Evangelion. Maverick's a piece of shit, but we all know that at this point. And when it comes to bands, well, that's a given. I don't listen to a lot of the music that Hasbro and Takara collaborate with. That is, except for one exception. When Studio Bones goes all in on an anime, they really go all in. One of the brilliant examples they've done is Blood Blockade Battlefront, one which I'm eagerly awaiting a third season on. Please give it to me, please give it to me. Another show I really enjoyed, which I'm pretty sure comes from A1 Pictures, but I could be wrong, would be Grand Blue Fantasy, which I think is based on a mobile game. Haven't finished the second season, but I really should because it was a really fun story. Now, what do these two have in common? The band. Bump of Chicken. This band is a pretty decent Japanese band, not one I listen to on a regular basis, but definitely one that I don't skip the opening for. So when I heard Takara was making a crossover figure for that band, I knew I had to get it. Just the fact that something like that existed was completely bonkers. It was my absolute jam. Something like that had no right to exist, but it did. So of course I was gonna get it, especially as a Legends aficionado. Would have loved to have gotten the shirt with it, but oh well, I don't think they're on the aftermarket at this point. That being said, is it ultimately worth it? Well, no. No, it's not. When it comes to Takara decos from the Takara Legends period of Transformers, and this kind of released around that same time, you essentially had two different types of decos. You had the really simple toon-accurate ones, and you had the really complex going-all-out ones. This fits into the former category, going for a much more minimalistic approach. They paint on all the details they need to, and it's a much subtler effect. So they've got a lot of paint on this thing, but you don't tend to notice it unless you look really close. Now, of course, you might be wondering, why is this light blue? Well, it's probably a reference to the micro-change version of Bumblebee, because they had a lot of different colors and this was the light blue Bumble version. One of my mates insists it's just a pure coincidence, but I reckon they wanted to reference that in some regard. Of course, one thing that the original micro-change blue Bumble did not have was the Bump of Chicken logo on the side here, but if you really want that representation of that micro-change thing on the shelf, you can probably rub that off, because that is just bare plastic, although do be careful because there is a lot of clear plastic on this thing, which I will get to, and that is actually one of my complaints. I know I don't usually complain about clear plastic, but it is what it is. First impressions though, looking really, really good. Nice that they've painted all the hubcaps silver, although I suppose that is a Takara thing, so it does make sense. You got a lot of silver paint on the front as well. They didn't paint the bottom here. I mean, they did put a black under bumper section, but I would have really liked if they'd painted that blue section there, maybe gunmetal or something. But still got headlights and grille all in grey, that's all good. The top section is a bit messy, but that was kind of one of the issues with the original mold. I have the Chase version, and you can see it was just as kind of weird there. Thing is, it doesn't look so bad on the Chase version. It kind of looks worse here on the blue, but I guess that's just part of the color. You've got a sort of off-white Autobot symbol on the top here. It's sort of a yellowy white. Almost looks like yellowed plastic, but no, that's just a tampograph. But it does the job pretty well. They've even got windows at the back here. They went and made that clear and painted the top of it. That's a nice touch, although it does have some side effects later on, which I'll get into. They got a tiny little spoiler, which is adorable, and they've painted the backlights there, which is also pretty neat, although it does stop in the middle there. Do kind of wish it went across the whole thing instead of just stopping in the middle, but here's what it is. Also, the Bumblebee version had a tampograph at the back there that was a reference to the movie version. Would have been nice to have something there, but for the most part, it's okay. It is a pretty solid Legends car mode. It's nothing special, but it's nice and chunky. It's what they were able to do with Bumblebee at the time, and it translates pretty well into this version here. I have two main gripes with this mode. The first is the use of clear plastic. Now, that will become more of an issue in the robot mode, but for now, I just don't like how see-through it is and how you can see the entire section, how messy it is in there. It just seems a bit haphazard, especially with this big section there with all the hinges. It just does not look good. It does end up looking great on Studio Series figures because those designs are much more detailed. Because of the realism, the kind of scrappiness doesn't seem to cause much of an issue. I'm not explaining it very well, but Studio Series figures look better. The original mold used completely solid black. Well, solid but shiny black, and it worked incredibly well. I feel they should have just stuck with that. Yes, you can't see the headmaster in there, but it still does a much better job, I think. The second issue is actually getting to the headmaster. You can see there's a tiny little headmaster headmaster in there, which he does come with. But getting to it is a pain in the ass, because if you try pulling these apart, it almost always falls apart. I've gotten used to getting it, but then, oh no, this doesn't actually fold up all the way. Oh great, you actually have to undo that so that that goes all the way. So you have to almost fully untransform it just to get access to this thing. It's a pain in the butt. And ultimately, it just makes a whole bunch of issues happen later on. Honestly, the Titan and Prime Master gimmicks with these Legends class figures caused way too many issues for what it was worth. I just feel they should have skipped the whole thing in the line. They should have just done what the leaders did, which is ditch the gimmick entirely. Well, the Combiner Wars leaders ditched the gimmick entirely. But well, we have what we have. But anywho, let's take a look at the little headmaster here. This is painted really, really well. This is basically Spike, Exosuit Spike. They've gone and done up the exosuit pretty damn well. It looks really good. I believe the original Legends release of Bumblebee came with this kind of mold. I'm not going to complain about the design or the paint here. It looks great, but I am going to complain about one particular thing. Why the f*** is the head clear plastic? Just why? That is the part that is constantly clicking in and out of the joint. That is gonna crack after a while, which is actually a running theme with this set, but I'll get into it later. But yes, it's a neat little Titan Master, and it does the job as a little companion there, and of course it transforms into a tiny little version of Cerebros, painted in gold, and it does look quite nice. Of course, this is compatible with any other Headmaster Transformer, so I'll bring Fangry over here as an example. You just yoink the head out, plonk the head on, and it works well. It's not really a reference to anything, the gold version, at least as far as I can gather, but that kind of works because it's a pretty rare exclusive, so if they made that a reference to something, it would piss a lot of people off. It's just a nice little gold version, and it looks pretty good. Also, I really dig Fangry. I know a lot of people don't like him, and I know you have to modify the knees to make him stand up better, but after that, he's a very fun figure. Not a contender for Figure of the Year, but I really like him. Of course, this set does end up having a lot more issues in the long run, but first, let's do some sizes. He is roughly 8 centimeters long, 4.2 centimeters wide, and 3.5 centimeters tall. And of course, for size comparisons, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Core Class figure, a standard War for Cybertron Micromaster, and Crumbs. Now, admittedly, the vehicle mode is pretty alright. Even with all the Takara decos, it's just kinda fine. That's not where most of my issues with this release lie. It's mainly with the robot mode and, of course, the transformation. Much like a lot of Titans Return figures, they had to engineer in a cavity to put a headmaster in. And it carried over to Power the Primes too, and it was annoying because the transformations really suffered for it. This one, more than most actually, really didn't need that. First thing you want to do is undo the legs and bring it up like that. This transformation is kind of the setup for the Core Class figure we saw on the Buzzworthy line, so you will see a lot of similar steps, but yeah, basically pull out the legs and pull them out there. Then you need to start getting these arms out like so. They're pretty solidly pegged in, but you do want to be gentle for reasons I'll get into later. Bring the arms out to the side like so, and oh great, it's falling apart again. Open up this whole section at the front here. Bring down these shoulders on the double hinge like that. There's a double hinge back there. Fold in the kibble, fold in the kibble. You might find there's a locking mechanism in there, but you just want to keep pushing. This rotates up a bit, that folds in a bit, and then that tab slots into there, and you're done. So, sort of similar to the Core Class Buzzworthy version. Oh, and I guess you need to move the arms out as well. But far less elegant, especially with that kibble stuff in the center. It doesn't really work. In robot mode, Bumble looks great in some areas and not great in others. And yes, a lot of that is due to the original mold. It is a bit of a clunky mold, but still, there are some new issues it brings to the table. But first, the good. The head sculpt, oh my god, that's a fantastic head sculpt. Perfectly captures the essence of the character, and it's adorable. It is way better than the Buzzworthy version. That's the one thing this does better than the Buzzworthy version overall, although most of it is sadly inferior. Not to say this is completely bad though, because the colors really rock. The light blue just looks absolutely sexy on this mold. I really wish that Selects would do a version of light blue Bumble at some point. Not as Glyph. I actually kind of want Glyph more, which is a dark metallic blue, but a light blue one would also be very much appreciated. Also pretty clean from the back. Yes, you've got massive hollowness in there, but that is kind of par for the course for the period. It's what you kind of came to expect from Legends class figures, and for the most part, it's clean. It does the job well enough. Problems start occurring when you get to the articulation, though. I mean, you've got a head swivel, although if you turn it around, it kind of looks creepy. Ball-jointed shoulders, ball-jointed arms like so. Ball-jointed hips, and no thigh swivel. Yeah, we're doing the whole no thigh swivel thing again because they had to waste all of the parts count on the gimmick to put the Titan Master in the middle there. Fantastic. I hate it when they do that. Of course, the knee bends and the foot pivots, although it's mostly locked in place, but come on, no thigh swivel, please. This isn't Vertebrake where the thighs are so tiny, you can't really engineer it in there. This is just a regular Legends class figure, and plenty of them had thigh swivels. It should be standard on all figures like this. Whatever. But that is kind of standard from the original. The original didn't have a thigh swivel either, although the original did have a lot of extra black paint all over the thing, although that's the Chase version. I don't think the Bumblebee version did. However, you will notice something. The chest looks extremely unfinished because of the way that they've incorporated the clear plastic, whereas this one looks much more whole because they've used solid matte plastic. I'm fine with them using clear plastic chests, but it's clear this wasn't designed to be clear. Oh god, I just said clear 2 times. Fuck. Point is, it wasn't designed to be like this, and as such, it feels hollow and lifeless in a lot of areas. And one interesting thing is that they've made other parts clear that weren't initially clear to make sure that the car mode is completely clear. You wanna know what other parts they did in clear? Take a look at that ball joint in there. What the hell are you doing? No, you don't do ball joints in clear plastic. That is a terrible idea. A lot of the internals on this thing are clear. A lot of transformation joints that have a lot of stress put on them are now going to become brittle over time, so I have to be very careful with how I store this figure. Otherwise, it is going to crumble to dust. It's happened with some of my Power Core Combined and Minicons. I don't mind clear plastic for the most part. In fact, I tolerate it way more than most people, but there are really stupid ways of doing this, and this is one of those, just so they could easily get that color match on the window. Oh, great job there. It's stupidity, absolute stupidity to do something like this. Like, no, don't do that. Don't make ball joints in clear plastic. Of course, you do get other issues with the alt mode, like the fact that the arm is a complete plank. Once again, because of the way the chest has to function. And of course, the shoulders are ginormous. Now, a lot of people took to swapping them around, which would then render the transformation useless. I'm not going to do that because of the clear plastic. I don't really want to risk it. But yeah, a lot of people did that, and I guess you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. It just renders the transformation useless. But I guess you do you, I suppose. Now, for sizes, he's 6 by 4 centimeters by 9 centimeters. And of course, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Core Class figure, a standard War for Cybertron Micromaster, and Crumbs. So ultimately, I do like this set, but I can't really consider it that great. It's got a lot of baggage from the original mold, and the clear plastic just does not work. And the transformation's a clunky son of a so there's that to watch out for as well. But hey, if you're obsessed with this kind of design, and if you like the band, you're probably going to go for this anyway, in spite of all these criticisms. It's the kind of figure that no matter what I say, your mind has probably already been made up on this thing. Unless you only just heard about it today and you just have no stake in this. Well, that's cool too, I guess. That's cool too. Whether this is a homage to Light Blue Bumblebee from Microchange or not doesn't really matter. The problem is clear. They had a certain aesthetic they wanted to get across, and they were going to do it without question. It doesn't matter what the mold is good for. It doesn't matter the specific design choices that Hasbro made. All of that shit. They've got ideas and they're gonna push them. As such, this figure suffers immensely. The paint is applied in places that it really shouldn't be. The materials are scary. I'm really concerned I'm gonna break this at a later date. I've got to be really gentle with this going forward. Really gentle. And beyond that, the original mold just ain't that great to begin with. It's not the best Bumblebee you've ever come across. Honestly, if you want a Legends Bumblebee, just get the Core Class Buzzworthy version. It's on clearance everywhere at the moment. It's just shell forming like crazy. It's itching for you to pick it up. Just do yourself a favor and give it a shot. There's no reason to get any version of this mold these days, whether it's this, whether it's Chase, or the original Bumblebee. It's dated, and this is probably the worst of it because of all of the decisions that Takara made. I still find it hilarious that this exists, but I'm not happy that it exists. They didn't have to do the band dirty like that with a piece of shit like this. Real bummer. But not as much of a bummer as tomorrow's release. A release that is so bad, I didn't even bother bringing it with me. The other ones I haven't shown in my hands over here were for logistical reasons, but this was pure laziness. Tomorrow, we discuss the stupidest idea that Hasbro has ever done at the size class. And oh boy, it's a real stinker.